Welcome to episode 5 of 3 People, 3 Brain Cells, the only podcast with 3 people who have a total of 3 brain cells. Today, we'll be discussing the topic of music alongside our guest, Francis Cho. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of 3 People, 3 Brain Cells. I'm Catherine, and I'm with my co-host Jonathan, and today our guest is Francis Cho. So, Francis, do you want to, introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Francis. I've been playing piano since I was young, but stopped a few years ago and then picked up the saxophone, and I enjoy listening to and playing music a lot.
Yeah, cool. So, as I think you guys probably know, we're going to be discussing music this episode. Usually we start off with a bit of a brief, but I think generally speaking, most of us understand what music is. So how about let's start instead with a little bit talking about our own experience with music. Sort of, what instruments have we played? What kind of musical training do we have?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go first because, I haven't really talked yet. So, like I'm sure many other people can relate to, I've been playing piano, or I guess I played piano for quite a while. I started when I was fairly young, and I stopped recently, like a year ago or so.
Oh, sorry,
because
a year ago?
A year or two, I believe, 2 years ago.
Recent, okay, huh?
What?
It feels like a decade ago, I don't even know, man.
It does not feel like a decade ago. But yeah, it was because I just didn't really like it, I didn't really enjoy it, I didn't really practice for it, and as such, I was really bad on it. I ended with, I believe, my level 8 exams, in which I got like a 60, so that's pretty correct. I also played the alto saxophone for quite a few years since grade 7, so kind of similar to Francis in that regard. I really like the sax. It's a cool instrument. Also played baritone saxophone for 1 year in grade 9. Funny story about that. I was basically forcibly converted to baritone sax for a band. And I was given probably the worst instrument in the entire school. So once it just stopped working altogether and I could not make a single sound. And then I was like, wait, did I just forget how to play this instrument? But no, it's just because the instrument's that god-awful. So yeah. As for other things, like not playing music, but I'm a avid listener of hip-hop. I like hip-hop and rap a lot, and I also listen to a lot of lo-fi, so yeah.
I'm just gonna go quickly because I have a very similar musical experience to John, so same piano experience, because obviously siblings, right? Had to suffer through the same stuff. I play French horn, and up until recently I was in school bands and whatever. I dropped this year because, lots of work, plus I couldn't handle the octomester schedule plus band. But I would say my musical taste is, I've been told by my brother it is garbage. Mostly I just listen to a lot of indie acoustic stuff, and I am not an avid music listener in a lot of ways, so I guess I'm open to suggestions.
Pretty similar to you guys. With piano, I actually did enjoy it, but I wasn't quite practicing that much. And I think something that also factored into it was seeing everyone else that played piano at Colonel Bai and feeling completely crushed.
Yeah, so at our school, there are quite a few people who are basically prodigies at piano. There's some people who are really good. If you know, the CB people, you'll probably know who we're talking about. But yeah. Francis, what are your interests in music though? Like favorite genres or anything?
I've always kind of tended to like hip hop like you, and then R&B as well, but I've also been getting onto a lot of jazz recently. And then I guess I kind of liked K-pop for a while, but usually I'm open to anything really.
Okay, so I noticed that both Francis and John, you guys both like sort of hip-hop and R&B, which I think are genres that are kind of not seen as as good as a lot of other musical genres like classical music or like jazz, or at least they're not as technically good. What do you guys think about that? Sort of, how do we decide what is good or bad music?
Well, I'm gonna just start and kind of give a bit of context, or at least I think this is what you were thinking of, Catherine, when we wrote about this and we kind of talked about this, and you might have heard about this too, Francis, but there is an argument circulating, as far as I know. I heard about it from the man, the legend himself, Ben Shapiro, political
Oh,
commentator
Jesus
and
Christ.
violin player, who, if you didn't know, his father, I believe, is like he's a conductor or a professional musician.
He
One or the
went to
other.
music school, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, basically, what he said, and I believe other people have also said, is that hip hop and rap isn't actually music, because music has the three components of melody, harmony, and rhythm. Which, I mean, how do you explain that to someone who doesn't know music terms? I think everyone knows what rhythm is. It's
Yep.
like it's a rhythm. Melody, it's like the jingle, and the harmony is like the multiple voices, right?
You should teach a theory class, John.
To actual musical theorists, because I know I have quite a few friends who actually study musical theory. I hope I did not make you cringe too hard by saying that. But yeah, so the argument that I heard is, oftentimes generally as a genre, hip hop only has that one element of rhythm, and therefore it's not actually music, or it's not real music. So yeah, Francis, I think you studied a lot more music theory than us. So do you wanna kind of talk about that, or your opinion on that?
Well, okay, my experience with music theory isn't that extensive, but I do have a bit of an opinion on music theory and sort of what music is like today. I think Uh, I mean, a lot of those that kind of assert that classical music or jazz music or whatever it is like a lot better than like pop or hip hop of today. Is that like Catherine mentioned? I think it requires like technical skill, and like the music itself is supposedly more complex because of its harmony and like the other elements of music. First of all, for the Ben Shapiro argument, like even in classical music alone, that really doesn't make sense because you have things like classical percussion pieces that are literally just rhythm. Like, are you gonna call that not music? Or like pieces that are like melodious but with a lot of rubato and no real sense of pulse. Like, are you gonna not call that music because it has no rhythm? But also, I believe that like the sort of elements of music have changed. Specifically, today, I think there's more of an element of sound. Like the amount of things that you can do in like a digital audio workstation, I believe it's called, is like really insane if you think about it. Like you can hear so many different sounds that you really can't emulate with any sort of instrument. But as for like the argument that there's no real technical ability involved, or like classical harmony or whatever it is, I think that doesn't inherently make anything good. You can throw chords around everywhere and have like four against whatever sort of polyrhythm, and it wouldn't really be interesting. I think you can use music theory to make your music more interesting, but I don't think like it inherently makes something good. And I think there are a lot of different ways that music can be good.
So what you're saying basically is that like theoretical musical technicality or difficulty doesn't necessarily just equate like value, right?
Yeah, I mean, like there's plenty of classical pieces that are really easy to play that lots of people enjoy.
And I think it's also, I guess, worth mentioning that I know that pop and hip hop has this like tendency of being labeled as like easy and like just people repeating like Versace, Versace, Versace like all the time. But I think it's actually Jonathan, you kind of like showed me the light on this by like making me listen to, I think it was about like psychodrama, some Kendrick Lamar stuff, and basically I guess opening my eyes to the fact that like a lot of these there's actually quite a lot of technique and skill, and I guess innovation really being pushed forward in these genres that is kind of insane, really.
I think that when you look at like just hip hop as a genre, for example, there's a lot of technicality, not just in like the execution, so to speak, of the music, but also when you look at things like writing the lyrics and flow and basically being able to conceive that kind of music in the first place, I think that's something that's really impressive. And that's just looking at like the rhythmic elements and stuff, right? And then when you actually also consider the actual lyricism and what story is being told here, right? So a lot of hip hop is known for being like really, as a genre, it's really good at storytelling. So for example, Keep It 100 by Joyner Lucas, or like Stan by Eminem, which, if you didn't know, is the origin of the term Stan. That's like K-pop Stan. I think that, you can also say stuff like pop, even if like the chord progressions in a lot of pop songs might be repetitive or fairly simple. I think there's still like, again, even like disregarding the idea that technicality or difficulty it's not like the only factor in terms of musical value. We can look at like other ways in which these genres also have technicality and difficulty, right? Like just pop singing. I think that if you listen to a lot of songs, a lot of impressive stuff that people do with their voices, right? Like for example, I think Ariana Grande can like warp and use her voice in really cool and impressive ways in her music. So yeah.
So you guys have been talking a lot about sort of what makes music good, but do you guys think there's these things make music objectively good? Like, do you think there's such thing as objectively good music? So do you think we could say objectively that, like, say, To Pimp a Butterfly is just objectively better as an album than, like, I don't know, whatever album One Thought, Two Thought, Red Thought, Blue Thought came from?
I would like to say it's objectively better, but I don't really believe that. I think it is better, but I don't think it's like objective, right? Because I mean, there's a difference between sounding good and actually being good, right? Because you have things like consonants, which actually come from like physics, math, nice ratios, whatever it is. But like whether music is actually good or not, I think is completely subjective.
I feel like this is actually an argument that like sort of goes into like art in general, like is something that is so subjective, like any sort of field of art can you have like objectively good art or bad art? And I actually leaning on the side that I do think that there's some art that's just better than others. And part of that is just that I do think that there's like art in general that is for whatever reason, like it's got more emotional impact, or it has, a longer lasting impression, or otherwise, I don't know, it's not just that it sounds good, but like it actually makes you feel things. So to the extent that I do think that a lot of techniques do sort of show that a piece of artwork is more skilled or that an artist is more skilled. And in that sense, there is a sense of like, this is objectively better.
Okay, yeah, so kind of to move things along, one point I kind of want to talk about is the idea of criticism and like art criticism. So of course we know for like a lot of art, I mean, in my head, I'm thinking specifically of like film reviews. There's often a really big disconnect between like what critics find to be really good and what the general masses, or I guess that's not the best way to put it, but like the general populace really likes. So what do you guys think of like pop or popular music?
Personally, I don't like popular music, but I can see the appeal. It's just like for me, why I don't like it is I like music that excites me, and there's just not really enough going on with pop music. Well, not all pop music. Obviously, there's like some that I actually do enjoy, but like just for the most part, like when you turn on the radio, it's not something that I find that really moves me or is interesting in any way.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Francis. Like, there are definitely some individual pop songs that I will really bop to and I'll really enjoy. I'm trying to think of any off the top of my mind. Oh, I like the Shape of You
Oh,
by Ed Sheeran.
Jesus.
Kind of a pop.
Do you actually?
I do like
kidding
that
me?
song, yes. But yeah, I agree with Francis. Where I think the majority of it is just kind of boring to listen to and really bland.
Do you guys think it's popular because it's boring and bland? Like, it's so inoffensive that, like, because a lot of the stuff that I think of as, like, really high skill music, so some of the rap you listen to, John, or I don't know, just a lot of the songs I enjoy, which are just not necessarily high skill, but they're nice acoustic indie stuff. Like I feel like they aren't, because they've got a specific aspect to them that's unique. They're not for everyone. Whereas for pop music, basically they're catchy, like they're inoffensive for the most part. It's like the same general themes, and you can sing along to them.
That's kind of why I don't believe that there are really objective standards to good music. I think there are like at least like some bullet points you have to hit, but because there are a lot of different groups that value different things. Like for example, when you're talking about different music critics, I know one very popular one that I also respect a lot is a YouTube channel called The Needle Drop, and he tends to not like pop albums too much, but I think because you have a lot of different communities that like different types of music, so then like you could have someone that really appreciates the attention to detail that Kendrick Lamar put into T-Pab, and then you could have like Cody down the street that listens to like 6ix9ine all day long, but like to his ears it's like fine. And then like to your point about like does the blandness actually make it popular? I think that is like part of it, right? Because when you want mainstream appeal, it's better to find something that is like so inoffensive, like you said, and where it's like there's so little substance that as long as like it's catchy and it can get you singing along to it, that's basically the only criteria. And because like if you wanted to add sort of different textures to it, like those specific things that could make your music more interesting could also like turn other people off from it. So I do think that's a part of what makes pop music popular.
Yeah, to sort of add on to that, I think when most people think of music and like what the point of them listening to music is, it's not just like, well, it's not because they want to really take time and appreciate like a high art form, but I think most people when they're listening to music, they just kind of want to get like that bop on, right? Where, so when we're talking about like more artistic things, and not to say that, not necessarily saying that making something more complicated or technical or more artistic means that it's going to sound worse or sound less catchy, but especially like in some circumstances, like I'm trying to think, like some very very experimental music, or in like Kendrick Lamar's "You" when he's screaming and voice cracking and like on the verge of suicide, right? For the average person who just wants to like chill and bop and like hear about how the club is in the best place to find a lover, so the bar is where he goes. That's like not the kind of stuff they want to tune into.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, I see your points. Okay, yeah, that was really illuminating. I actually feel like I learned from that. Carrying on this idea of what good music is, we've mostly been talking a lot about sort of like Western music and sort of, pop, hip hop, that sort of thing. But let's talk about music in different cultures. I do think that there's very much sort of a bias in terms of, when we think of, for example, classical music, we think of like classical European or like Western music. When we think of like pop music, we often think of Western music. I know there's some, for example, like you see music from like Korea, from India, or other international sort of like artists kind of filtering into the West now, but for the most part I think the West is where most of the music scene seems to be at.
When you said, oh, the music scene is like mostly influenced by the West, like I can definitely see how you would think that, but I also think that I don't know, there's a bit too much like, I guess close-mindedness is the word for when you're thinking about music, because especially when you think about cultural music, I mean, there's no really good label for it, because a lot of people just slap on the title world music, and it's literally music from everywhere else other than North America, but whatever. Like I think what's really interesting about those sorts of music in different cultures is that they conceive and like think of music in a lot of different ways. Like the way they approach improvisation, for example, or how important rhythm is in one culture might be like way more important than how another culture views it. Like for example, again, don't want to make too much of a generalization, but I know rhythm is pretty important in African music, and especially because it's so closely tied to traditions of dance in some areas. And I know for traditional Korean music, like there's like they approach improvisation as well, which is pretty interesting. But it's pretty different from the way that, for example, jazz musicians approach improvisation. And yeah, I think there's just a lot of focus given to typical Western like sort of concepts of music that don't really apply, or that you could scale differently to different cultures.
Okay, yeah. Do you have any like sort of suggestions about how we can maybe change that and be more open-minded about music?
I mean, my main recommendation would be just listen to different stuff. It's kind of hard because we're so used to listening to things on streaming services, but um, I'm sure like when you find a niche that you're really interested in, you just fall down a rabbit hole. Like I think that can happen pretty easily with things like this. So because there are a lot of different groups and artists that actually implement these sorts of different cultural ideas into their music. I know there's one Korean group, I think it's called Black String, which is like a mix of New York jazz and like traditional folk Korean music. Um, I mean, yeah. My main thing would just be try listening to different things, and I guess read about stuff if you want, but I don't really think anyone's gonna do that.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. Sort of I wanted to touch a bit on the idea of like appropriation. I mostly know sort of like references in terms of like the fact that a lot of the music, like pop and hip hop music, that's really popular, at least in North America, tends to have roots in a lot of like African American music or even like African music or Latin American music, right? So you hear a lot of sort of the rhythms you might find in pop might come from. I don't want to say Latin American because it is like that's really vague, but also I'm not sure of a better term to say. Or in terms of like jazz, not jazz. Oh yeah, well yes, jazz, yes, rap. Those both have roots in sort of African American, sort of communities. I think jazz came from like blues, which is very African American again. So, I know the straightforward narrative is like, well, the whites took them and stole it and now are making money off of it. But then I think that it goes a step further when you see, for example, rap being used by, people of all different cultures, right? You see rap in like K-pop, you see rap in sort of people who aren't necessarily like the original American colonizers and whatnot. So, what do you guys think about cultural appropriation in music? Is it okay? Is there what should we? I don't know. What opinion should we hold about it?
So just to quickly address K-pop specifically, um, I don't want to generalize lest I get an equity complaint, but most K-pop I've listened to, they really don't know how to rap. I mean, okay, the okay again, I haven't listened to that much, but from what I do know though, like BTS's rappers actually have a history of like coming from underground rap, and if you listen to some of their older music and also their personal projects, you can definitely tell. But like in their newer music and just from the current K-pop scene, I really don't see it as being very authentic to what it once was. But I also don't think that's a problem in general because, I mean, music always just naturally evolves from culture to culture, and I think it's a very obvious and cliche answer, but I think the most important part is respect, right? Because so I follow a lot of jazz accounts on Instagram, and there's like a big discussion when like the BLM movement was like really hitting its peak about like white musicians playing jazz music, or it was like recently like rebranded as sort of just Black American music. And the sort of approach that I saw most people go with was that white musicians are welcome, but they have to acknowledge that they're in like the house under the roof of Black American musicians, and I think that makes sense because like jazz specifically was born out of a lot of the struggle that like came with enslavement. I'm not too sure of the timeline, but I believe it was like the songs they would sing for certain occasions evolved into blues, evolved into jazz, evolved into rap, etc.
Yeah, I think I can confirm that because I had to do a project on blues in ninth grade. But yeah, a lot of like the stuff from blues came from, would it be plantation songs or sort of songs that a lot of slaves would sing when they're like doing their work. So definitely very direct sort of history right back into like sort of slavery. Okay, in terms, let's continue this discussion on sort of like respect and I guess a little bit of like ethics in music. And go into, the age old question about problematic artists. Is listening to problematic artists okay?
I think that it really is a question of like, are your actions directly going to support them, if that makes sense? Because kind of just to echo what we said in last episode, if I were to like pirate per se, let's say, I don't know, I mean, you have written here like XXX Tentacion. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but if I were to listen to his, well, actually that's a really bad example because he's passed away, but for example, I don't know, like R. Kelly, right? Who you also have written down here, right? If I were to like pirate their music and stuff, am I really supporting them, if you know what I mean? Like, I think that's the question. I don't know. Personally, my stance is kind of more to the yeah, it's okay side of things. But I'm curious as to how, well, I know how, I'm pretty sure I know your stance, Catherine, but I'm curious as to what your stance is, Francis.
I think I kind of agree. Like, whether you pirate it or honestly, because of how little artists make from streaming royalties, I honestly don't think you would even be supporting them that much by like streaming them. But yeah, I guess yeah, again, I don't want to repeat anything that you guys said on the podcast with Joyce, but one interesting difference that I found was with like no one's ashamed of listening, I mean, sorry, reading Harry Potter or anything, right? But like if you say like you listen to X or listen to R. Kelly, like you're gonna get some weird looks. And I'm wondering why that is.
I mean, okay, firstly, I think that is like difference in scale. Like J.K. Rowling did not,
Okay, true.
she did not like rape a bunch of people. She didn't beat up her girlfriend, right? So there's this difference in that. She just is posted bad comments, spread some misinformation that was harmful for trans people. But
well, how about well then let's talk about like what's his name?
H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, Lovecraft behind like all the eldritch horrors.
Yeah, that's
and,
true.
and stuff like that.
One thing I will say is that I think in some ways music is seen as, especially music that ends up being more personal, I feel like there's more of a reflection of the artist. Like I find that a lot of times when you're talking about music, people tend to be fans of artists, or they specifically really like when fans of Ariana Grande will tell them like what Ariana Naders or whatever. But like when it comes to like franchises like Harry Potter, you don't say, oh, I'm like a Rowling fan. You say, oh, I'm a Potterhead, right? It's more about the franchise, less about the artist, whereas I think music is more artist-centered.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, I think part of it is, though, aren't you sort of still perpetuating their legacy in terms of, like, if you're going to listen to their music, if you're going to sort of stay fans of their music or talk about their music to other people, you're still kind of spreading, like, even if they're dead, like I can't pronounce his name. XXX Temptation? Is that it? X, okay.
Just say X, yeah.
Like that, right? Even if they're dead, then you're still spreading a sort of legacy. You're still spreading a lot of their own personal thoughts and viewpoints. Because I do find that a lot of that does come up in music in terms of how they might, for example, speak of women, or a lot of rap is very personal, I find, or events about like their personal issues.
Okay, so yeah, I definitely see your point about like spreading their legacy, but it becomes kind of difficult when you think the music itself is really good, but you don't really agree with what they might be saying in the lyrics. Fortunately, I can't think of too many examples where someone's put out like a great work, but that was they were like really problematic in and of like the lyrics themselves. Like one funny example, I haven't actually listened to it, but apparently R. Kelly put out well, it was like a short album or like a single song about um like admitting to what he did basically, but still saying that it's not that bad or something along those lines, and it was really poorly received, not just because of like what he was saying, but the actual music itself. But anyway, yeah. I mean, if you think of like Michael Jackson, for instance, like his music is really well liked, but um, I I mean, I don't think he's singing about like touching some little boys in his music, right?
So, last thing that we're going to talk about, just I kind of going right back to when we were all talking about our musical experience. Note that we all mentioned piano, and I do think that piano is one of those things that like almost all the Asian people I know, like basically every Asian person I know except for like one, has played piano at some point in their lives. So, how do you guys feel about that? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And what's interesting is, I guess this is a little bit irrelevant, but my politics teacher, and yes, I do take Canadian and world politics as a course, was actually talking about how she's not Asian, by the way, she is Caucasian, she's white, was talking about how she was forcing her daughter to take piano lessons, even though her daughter really didn't want to. And she was talking about the reasoning behind it is it's a skill that you think is important to have. I think she was talking about how when you play music that like alters the way you think or something like that. Because I know I don't know about, I mean, actually I don't know if you guys did, but at least I watched a TED Ed video about how like musicians are smarter than not musicians or something like that, or like music makes your brain like fire up when you're playing it and you like become smart or something. I don't know. If you can't tell, I'm really tired. Again, I just had a day-long tournament with Francis actually. But anyway, so I guess there's reason behind it. I think that, and then she was also talking about how, hey, guess what? Even if you don't want to now, like stuff like that changes. I remember, not an Asian person as well, but in grade 7, my homeroom teacher, who is a great great guy, by the way, he was a really cool teacher, was talking about how he regrets having stopped playing piano because it's something he wishes that he could do now. But I think I've heard a lot of like sort of rhetoric or a lot of things along those lines, either from like people saying, oh, I really regret the fact that I like stopped doing this. But as for the actual reason, well, especially why like piano specifically, because I think piano is one of the more expensive instruments if you're gonna have like an actual piano in your house and stuff. So I'm not too clear, or I don't really have a theory about why specifically piano is the case there. But yeah.
Yeah, I would mostly like agree with what John was saying. Also, like, yeah, I didn't really like playing piano at first, and uh, there's like a thing that happened between me telling my parents I didn't want to play piano that ended up with third grade me peeing in a box and then missing it.
Oh
But
no.
anyway, uh, I think I'm definitely glad I took piano lessons, even though I don't play anymore. One, because I think it just gave me more of an appreciation for music, and like music is one of my main interests now, so I'm very grateful for that. But also because like I don't think I would have started playing saxophone either without having that background, because like I started playing saxophone in grade 7, but when I started taking lessons in grade 11 for jazz, and like if I didn't have that piano background, I would not have made as much progress as I did. So I'm generally grateful for it. But yeah, when you think about like why do so many Asian parents make their kids play piano? I think, I mean, like, I'm sure there's a number of reasons it might have started, but like, why it like continues now is because like, well, every other Asian kid does it. So, I mean, it would be really weird if you didn't do it.
Okay, cool. I think that's about it. Do you guys have anything else you want to add? Any other subjects? Otherwise, we can jump right into questions.
Listen to music. It's good for you. Oh, also, John, the video you were referring to, I'm pretty sure I've watched it before. It's like specifically because playing and listening to music like lights up several areas of your brain at once, and it's like more areas than any other activity does, if I remember correctly.
Wow, that's actually really cool. Um,
So let's move into the questions now.
so let's see. We're going to try to answer a whole bunch of questions today because I think a lot of the questions we got were really interesting. We're just going to try to keep it brief. So firstly, let's just do the simplest one right away. Favorite songs, everyone?
That's a good question, actually. um, Francis.
I don't really have any favorite songs. It's more like favorite
Yeah, okay.
albums.
Favorite albums, everyone?
To Pimp a Butterfly, as you guys have said before. Oh, there's one called All My Heroes Are Cornballs that by JPEG Mafia that I really, really like.
Uh, I can give a recommendation. I think if you guys have remember Joyce's recommendation of Session Stevens, another one of his albums is Illinois, I think, and it's really quite good as well. Which I might, yeah. So that's a good album that I listened to.
I mean, for albums, there are a lot of really good albums. I think one of my favorites is Good Kid, Mad City by Kendrick Lamar. I mean, Francis has already said To Pimp a Butterfly, but I really like that album.
Let's go to the next question. What do you guys think about the rise of 100 gecs and hyperpop? Can someone give an explanation of what those two things are?
Very extremely experimental music is basically all you have to know. I'm pretty sure 100 gecs became popular because of TikTok, or like they're involved with TikTok in some way. And then there's this whole thing about people gatekeeping the music because it's like, oh, you only know 100 gecs because you're on TikTok, and we in the r/music community don't like TikTok. So then there's this whole gatekeeping thing going on. I listened to their album 1,000 gecs. I like the one called like Ringtone or something. I only listened to it once, so I don't know how I feel about it really, but yeah, it's cool, I guess.
Okay, next question. How does music taste work and evolve? One thing is I actually read an article about how like the music you listen to around the age of 20 tends to be the music that you end up liking for the rest of your life. I can't.
Wait, are you telling me if I exclusively listen to like Billie Eilish, I will just become the number one Billie Eilish
I
fan?
don't think it's like at the ripe age of 20 you get like indoctrinated by it. I think it's more like at that age maybe it's kind of like set already. You know what I mean? Like you've kind of gone to your final form in terms of music taste, but I'm sure even that probably evolved. I mean, that's a lot of years afterwards for you to like not change your opinion at least once, right? But I don't know. What do you guys feel like personally?
Um, I mean, my taste has changed a lot. I think a lot of it comes from uh, like talking to music about your friends. Like I know I have some friends that I have like pretty similar music tastes with, that share similar music tastes with, and we discuss those things a lot. And then they often like recommend things that are like sort of in that vein, but also a little bit different. And I think I also maybe a bit of an anomaly, at least in terms of like people at our school that like listen to music based on online reviews, which like I think people do that for music, but no, I mean sorry for movies, but not really music. But yeah, listen to a review of like an album, and if like they make it sound really appealing, I check it out, and usually I end up really liking it. And so that's actually how I discovered the All My Heroes Are Cornballs.
I mean, honestly, I think a lot of it is just kind of RNG. It's kind of like a wait, what? Like a roll of the dice? I think a lot of it just has to do with what you actually end up coming across, if that makes sense. Um, so like, yeah, and I don't know as for the actual psychology behind what makes, like, for example, Catherine like bad Spanish music
Wow.
and me not like bad Spanish music.
That's so hurtful.
So I mean, obviously, that'd be an interesting thing to read like an actual paper on. But I think in terms of actually changing taste and developing taste, like Francis kind of said, I think a lot of it just does fall down to if you can like end up finding and being exposed to a lot of music that you end up liking, then obviously that's going to develop your quote unquote musical taste in that way. So
I
yeah.
mean, there's definitely also like a sort of regional thing, like you were saying, right? Like, kind of tying into someone asked the question, why do people hate country music so much? There's definitely sort of like, there tends to be, you see more country music in the South, or you just tend to see it in more rural areas, at least in America, and I think Canada as well, but I cannot confirm that. Whereas a lot of like bigger cities, especially bigger cities in America or coastal cities in America, tend to like sort of, what would we say, like hip hop or rock. But it also tends to be sort of more diverse places, probably have more diverse music, right? Okay, another question. What have you ever listened to a concept album, and what do you think of them or the idea of them?
I'm assuming they mean things like To Pimp a Butterfly, where there's more of like a central theme to it.
Yeah.
Generally. Oh, also, apparently concept albums are pretty popular in K-pop because they have like the storylines in their music videos and things like that. But so out of the concept albums I did listen to, I usually really enjoyed them because uh, wait, what was I just saying?
You enjoy concept albums.
I usually really enjoy at least like the concept albums that I've listened to because I mean it's always a treat when like the theme or concept is really interesting, but of course like the music itself has to actually be good, and usually it does end up being that way, but sometimes there are like attempts made and it's just really awkward, so it's hit or miss, I guess, depends on who you listen.
I mean, I will say that maybe as like someone who really likes like stories and stuff to begin with, I really find it satisfying when you see sort of stuff, because I do find that like songs, especially being really short, it's hard to have any like thematic development or to be able to tell any coherent sort of story within one song. So having that continue throughout an album, and I think especially like I love motifs a lot. So seeing some of like ideas that come from like one song being repeated in the next, and you also see musical motifs as changing and shifting over time. I find that like really, really awesome.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously, if you have an entire album dedicated to like one theme or like not necessarily one theme, but like a central sort of idea, I guess, obviously you're gonna have more, I guess, space, so to speak, to work with that and to develop that idea. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna say that I agree with Francis. I think that if you talk about if you're gonna enjoy a concept album or not, that's just gonna fall down to if you like that music, regardless. Like, if you like that person's music and if you like their style or whatever. As for just the idea of concept albums in general, like Catherine said, I think it is really interesting, and especially when you talk about like the art behind, again, To Pimp a Butterfly, which we've talked about like too many times. But yeah, it definitely, it gives a lot of space when you can see sort of the ideas and the themes and everything being developed from song to song over the course of an entire album. And I think that when it's executed correctly, it can be pretty cool.
Cool. So last question. Have you considered a career in music, and what happened?
I like it's on how even if and it's not even and if so, it's just
What
and what happened. It's like
Just
if you haven't,
automatically
then what
assuming
happened?
I failed.
Oh my god.
I mean, like, I don't know. I'm not even in university yet. I don't have anything close to, like, actually having that career experience. But yeah, I am considering a career in music, and nothing's happened yet. But like, I'm hoping good things happen. Um, Basically, I'm auditioning for some jazz programs at different universities, and they're pretty competitive, and I don't have much experience, but I still want to try, basically. And a lot of that came down to like me wanting to have a lot of fun with what I do. I think I'll definitely do gigs and whatnot, like making money off of music, or just like continue playing music in the future, whether or not I make that my main source of income or if it's more of a side thing. But one thing that really pushed me to that is, do you guys watch Heathers last year?
Yep.
I wish I could have. I had like time conflicts. I couldn't.
Oh, that's too bad. I really enjoyed playing in the pit band, and yeah, I guess I was just looking for more experiences like that. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thanks everyone for your questions. They're really insightful and we really loved answering them. To wrap everything up, Francis, I know we've talked a lot about music, but just media recommendation.
Maybe something non-music related to
Yeah,
spice
it
it up.
actually is non-music related, John. Yeah, there's a Netflix special called Middleditch and Schwartz. It's made up of, I think, 3 50-minute long episodes. It's improvised comedy, and it is the funniest thing I've seen in a long time. And I don't know. I don't think that many things really make me laugh that hard nowadays. And I think there's something for everyone to like about it. So I'd really recommend watching Middleditch and Schwartz.
Okay, well, that's awesome. That sounds cool. Actually, I might give it a try. Thanks, Francis, for being here.
Oh wait, I have one more thing to say.
Okay.
I just want to say that Alex Wang and I are actually going to start a music channel, or a YouTube channel discussing music, such as like some of the topics we talked about here and more. So yeah,
So if you
Alex
guys liked
Wang
what we were
bullies me.
talking about and you want to hear more from Francis, make sure to check out his channel.
which doesn't exist yet, but I'll announce
which
it
does not
on
exist
my
yet.
Instagram, so you can follow me on my Instagram if I accept you, Yellow Francis.
Yellow Francis, everybody. That is YELLOW. And then
I
his
think it's a bit
name.
difficult to misspell that.
Okay, so that's gonna wrap up this episode of Three People, Three Brain Cells. Thank you everyone for coming out and, well, not coming out, but tuning into the show. If you have any questions, suggestions, you have any topics you want to see on the show, you want to be on the show, that'd be great. Just DM us on our Instagram at 3p3bc.podcast. And again, yeah, I just like to give a thanks to Francis for coming out and recording with us, because we've all been incredibly busy with this new schedule and with as school and life is as it is. So yeah, without any further ado, thank you guys once again for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.